I've been very fortunate and deliberate to surround myself with good people throughout my life. But I've recently gotten to sort of observe, not close to me, but nearby, somebody that could be classified as a sociopath
Yeah.
and and a narcissist.
Yeah.
Like I don't want to use those psychological terms, but just
I,
it's like, oh, people, come with different biology too. So it's not just like the trauma you might experience in your early life and all the deep complexity that leads to the psychology that you have as an adult, but it's also the biology you come with, the nature that you might not just have the machine that can empathize deeply with the experience of others, or maybe a machine that gets a dopamine rush from the manipulation of other humans,
Yeah.
or the control of other humans.
Yeah, I mean, for an example of my own background, my mom didn't have a father. You know, he left really early on in their childhood. You know, my mom raised her two sisters and basically kept a household. She was a great mom. She was a badass. You know, she was very independent. She showed me how to be independent. She showed me how to kind of watch out for others and kind of build me up in that way. And I had a great childhood as far as her and kind of like how she molded me. Later on, I figured out that when I had my own kid, you know, I figured out that she was basically trying to make me into what she didn't have in a way. And if I can get to see somebody's parents, you know, that's usually a sign of something, at least for me, as far as figuring out where people are. I think there's something to be said about nature and nurture and how some people come up. Some people are just born with that predatory instinct, you know, and you'll never know. I mean, they spend their whole life practicing how to hide it. But if you can figure out somebody's, you know, background, childhood, where they're from, you can kind of tell something about them. You know, I'm from Tijuana. You know, I'm a survivor. That's my background as far as where I'm from.
Culturally, genetically, psychologically, the full shebang.
Yeah, I guess some people are born with certain predispositions, and if they're in the right environment, some of the negative aspects might flourish more than others. You know, for me, I mean, I grew up skateboarding in Tijuana, and I remember breaking into my first backyard pool. It was a house that a cartel guy owned, and we used to skate the pool in the back of it. So I learned how to pop open padlocks with a small vehicle hydraulic lift. And I remember doing that. And later on in life, I got to train with people from other parts of Mexico and work with them. And I remember pulling that trick off, and they were like looking at me like, "Where'd you learn that?" It's like some burglars in Tijuana, you know. And they're like, "Wow, that's interesting. Like, are all people from Tijuana like that?" And I said, "No, we're not all like that, but I guess in some way we are, because you know, Tijuana produces kids like that. You know, she produces, like, the environment itself produces a pretty specific person, I guess. You know, where our normal or our baseline normal is way different than most.
The trajectories that you can take in life are defined in a way that aren't available elsewhere in the world.
Yeah.
And so you develop, I mean, that's part of that psychological, part of that is cultural and so on. Part of that is the cultural trauma, but then also the ethical lines based on the corruption. Because I grew up in the Soviet Union, and there's the same kind of understanding that there's some gray area of corruption.
Yeah. It's always there, like on the outskirts or even in the center. How you can grease things to make things easier, and how it's like it's a personal thing. Like, I'll just, you know, pay off in Tijuana we have a mordida is what we call it. You know, when you pay a cop off, una mordida means a bite. So, and
what's the bite aspect?
So you get stopped for a traffic violation of some sort, and the cop walks up to you. Obviously, you don't say the word bite, but it's like a slang term for it. And he asks for your paperwork, and you know, and if you get fined or get a ticket, you say, "Can I pay the ticket here?" Is what they say. And you know, put your money inside the paperwork and hand it over to the cop. Mordida. You think it's, you know, I'm just going to do it and nobody knows, you know, but it's a systemic thing. Everybody, like a lot of people do it, and then they don't trust the police because they are fed with this.
Yeah, I mean, same thing was in the Soviet Union. It's funny. But then there's something inside you where that kind of those opportunities come, like with a police officer, where you realize you could just pay a little bit of money and get out of a thing, and then you realize you can pay a little bit of money or do a favor to get your kids in a better school or something like that.
Yeah.
But there comes opportunities where all right, if I do this little thing, I can get a huge promotion, or I can get a huge increase in my power, or I can get a lot of money, and something inside you says no.
Yeah.
That's not right.
Yeah.
And I wonder what that is. Because because it feels different than the legal systems within which operate. There's some kind of basic human integrity, human decency. I wonder if that's like constructed or it's always there. If it's like, again, nature versus nurture.